Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good evening. Welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid Holakouee. I'll be with you for the next hour here on Radio Hamra. As has been the case with all my shows lately, I start by saying our hearts and minds are with the people of Iran and wishing for the best outcome as soon as possible, whatever that may look like. And I know things are not looking to me so good as of late, but I also know these things are complicated. It's hard to know what kind of twists and turns are up ahead. And with Nowruz coming up, I know for many Iranians, this time that usually is such a exciting and celebratory time, our hearts are a little bit heavier this year. So it feels different, or it might feel not as celebratory right now. But Nowruz also brings with it the hope of a new day and a new year. And so we're hopeful for the year ahead to see what will happen, what will come for the people of Iran. But yeah, it's been tough seeing the news lately. And as I said, sometimes things are hard to predict. When you look at history, we look at events, but we weren't there day to day to know what was going on. So I don't know what's going to happen. I've definitely felt a little more sad lately. I'm not here to dishearten anyone or discourage people or to make people lose hope. But I think for many people that has been the experience. It's not really clear what's going to be happening, what the path forward is going to look like or should look like, or if there really is a plan or strategy that would help the people of Iran. But we are all hopeful. I guess that's all I can really say at this time. I mentioned before, I'm not a journalist to give you the up-to-the-date information of what's happening and now happening with the war. But yeah, we're hoping for next year to be a good one for the people of Iran and for them to have freedom very soon. People I talk to personally, of course, too, but professionally, what's happening in Iran is definitely on their minds, as it is for me, and affecting them and affecting how they feel. Maybe infected kind of works too, but affecting how they feel in general. And I was thinking about even for myself as a father and to the parents out there, it's tough because when you're feeling a heaviness, then you are trying to interact with your kids. It's hard to put that heaviness completely aside and be there with them. But really, it's a challenge I think we have to try our best to face and to meet. And as I say this, and I think of the parents in Iran and what they're going through with their children. And so again, I always have to make this point of there's nothing we can compare to what they are going to and going through. My messages are generally, of course, it's of love to the people of Iran, but when I'm sharing my thoughts or opinions, it's to the people outside of Iran, because the people in Iran are just inspiring us, and I can't really say I have any advice or things I can share with them that we're learning from them. So I'm talking to those of us outside of Iran who are trying their best to deal with what's so much easier to deal with, but still what we're trying to deal with, the heaviness of seeing what is happening in Iran. So yes, as parents, I feel it too, that in general, there's always a sense of when you are with your child, you want to try your best to, not like in a fake way, but you want to bring a loving, joyful type of demeanor with them and interaction with them. If you have a bad day at work, you don't want to bring that bad day at work home to your kids. Or if you're just having a bad day, it doesn't mean you have to be, a clown and always have this big, huge smile on your face no matter what. However, you want to try your best to be able to put that aside as much, because they need you. They need us to be there for them. And of course, all parents are human themselves, so they have ups and downs, good days, bad days, days of more energy, less energy, days where you get sick or injured, or all sorts of things. So we're not invincible and our kids don't need us to be, but we still do have to show up for them in the best way that we can, consistently. And if you are married or have a co-parent that you live with, you want to try to support each other through that. Some of you, one of you might have a good day, the other one might be able to has a bad day, and you pick up the slack for the one that's struggling, vice versa. It's just, there's these challenges that do come up. So yeah, it's been tough for me at times. I'll be seeing what's happening in Iran, talking to people about what's happening, and then I want to go play with my son, and he's, just wants to either play or smile or joke. And I try to get into a silly mood and play with him, sing with him, do whatever it is that we do. And honestly, I have to try my best to check out of the situation, remove myself from it. And I recognize that that comes from a huge place of privilege. Going back to what's happening to the people of Iran, they can't just, not think about what's happening when they are dealing with the regime before them, also now dealing with possibly bombs in their area, or not sure what's going to happen in that uncertainty. I understand again that this is from a place of privilege, saying, let's talk about the challenges of those outside of Iran, when it's so much harder for those who are in Iran. So even there, I think at some level, I know I'm not giving advice, and I'm not going to try to, but I think just in general, the sense that parents, I've even seen some videos where they're trying to play with their kids or just distract them from what's going on. Parents are, in a lot of ways, the buffers between the outside world and their children, of the stresses and strains, to let kids be kids and not have to worry about certain things. And so when parents are dealing with these huge existential types of worries and genuine safety, it's incredibly difficult. So again, can't compare the task of the parents of Iran to those outside of Iran trying to do the same thing. And so yet we are trying our best with what we are dealing with. And so, usually when we think of checking out or distraction, or even avoidance, it's generally a negative thing. And it tends to be, I think, in most people's lives, they avoid things that are important for them to face in so many ways, from internally to things that are, with themselves, that they don't want to look at, they don't want to face, don't want to check out. Even, let's say, go see a doctor to get something checked out medically, we might avoid because we're afraid of what we might hear or see if we see a doctor, get some kind of test, even though we can understand rationally that if there's nothing wrong, well, then you get the peace of mind of knowing, okay, you're good, actually, so you can stop worrying. And if you're not okay, well, then you can address it. And if you were not okay and didn't address it, the problem would just get worse. So really, we know that it's not the right thing to do, but we've all been there where we avoid getting something checked out because of that. And so we see where avoidance can be harmful. Avoidance also can come up in relationships. People don't talk about something that's going on. They don't want to face a conversation that might be difficult, or an issue that is there, or their own feelings that are going on, all these things. So we avoid in a lot of very, very harmful ways, and then distract to try to avoid also, or try to check out in different ways. And that can't even be healthy, which I'm going to talk about in small amounts, but we also could check out in negative ways. We're unhappy about the situation of our life, and rather than do something about it, taking some action, we try to distract ourselves with video games or sports or TV, or now a very easy one is just our phones and social media, where you can just scroll and look at random videos and things for hours and hours that you can check out. And all the while you are avoiding real problems that you actually can do something about. And that is really, really not good. So avoidance gets a bad reputation because it can be very bad, and it tends to be very bad in most people's lives. But like most things, even if something it tends to be bad, it doesn't mean it's always bad or doesn't have any positive function about it. Because avoidance can definitely be healthy in the right moments. So first of all, just sometimes checking out can be good. You have a hard day of work, and then you come home, and then you play your video game or do whatever it is that you like to do for an hour or two, to just get your mind off of things, and then decompress and then get back to life. Now, that being said, only if you're not avoiding some responsibility you need to do. So if you have kids and they need you and then you want to go to your room and play video games for 2 hours, that would be problematic. But if you have that luxury in the sense that there isn't some responsibility you are avoiding, then yeah, checking out a distraction, I don't think that is actually unhealthy. I think that could be okay to just go. Someone's getting lost in a different world can be a pleasant experience or just something we enjoy. I think the problem could be when we escape to another world to avoid the real world because we don't like our real life and more and more get drawn to that escape. I think there's a book that then became a movie called Ready Player One. I only saw the movie, but it was kind of this futuristic, not even that far in the future, where virtual reality had really advanced. And then you'd see almost everyone was just spending most of their day, almost all of their day, in virtual reality experiences because they could just do anything and have these really amazing lives there and characters and interactions and experiences. But then their real lives were, for most people, very, very horrible. It was almost a way of numbing people to their real lives. So we do have to be careful of that. We can go too far and avoid our lives and escaping. But again, that doesn't mean it's always a bad thing. When avoidance or distraction can actually be a good thing, there's a few different scenarios. One is when we can't do anything about the situation and we have to wait a little bit to see what happens. So I was talking about avoiding going to see the doctor, so I can carry that example forward. When you finally go see that doctor, not finally, you do it sooner rather than later, and they do some tests, and then you have to wait for those test results. Often, especially if it's could be scary results, it can be hard not to think about them. Let's say, is that biopsy going to come back with cancer, or is it a benign tumor? Is a blood test, is it going to reveal some illness that's really scary to deal with, or is everything okay? So it can be hard not to think about it. But here, distraction or avoidance is, to me, the better option, in the sense that there's nothing you can do and can actually figure out or need to deal with in thinking about it. Oh, is it, because you don't know yet, is it this or is it that? And you might think about the different scenarios. Oh my God, what if I actually have it? What would I do? What's going to happen to my life? All these things. The thing is, you don't know yet. So that preparation doesn't really take you very far or serve too much of a function. Maybe very briefly, if there's some things you might have to get in order, but more than likely you could wait till you have the results to go forward with whatever it is you have to do based on those results. And that's why, waiting often is the hardest part, because when you're waiting, you can't do anything. You can't take an action. So even if it's bad news, you could take action, but before you have the news, you can't take action until you're powerless. So in those cases, it's actually good. If you're, waiting for some test results, if you watch a movie that, takes your mind off of things, or do something fun that is, going to take you to a different world and makes you not think about it, it's actually a very good thing that you would benefit from. Because again, the ruminating is not going to do anything than just, make you very stressed and anxious and not feel very good and not get you very far or get you far at all. So that's one type of scenario, when there's things that are completely out of your hands and you have to wait to see. Then distraction is not a negative thing. And we have to be careful, because sometimes we think, well, I'm thinking about it, that's positive, or we think it's always productive, but it's not to think about some results that you can't do anything about or have to just wait on. And in general, that scenario of when you can't do anything about it is when distraction can make sense. So even with what's going on in Iran, for especially those of us outside of Iran, it can be important to do what we can do. So it's not that we can't do anything, but share stories with the people of Iran, talk about what's going on, and just put things out there so that people don't forget or take their eyes off of Iran. So there's those things, and people are also creative through arts and other ways that they can do things. So there are things that you can do, but also we are limited in everything that we can do at this time. So often, even though it might not feel good, you are waiting a bit. And so I know this could sound maybe like you don't care, but only watching the news that is coming out of Iran, as important it is to stay informed. I absolutely think that is true. But just bombarding yourself with constant images and news is not necessarily helping you, but also not helping the people of Iran. So staying informed is good, but overly stimulating yourself with images and things that are happening there is not going to be helpful, and just kind of will likely get you in a worse kind of a place. And as I was talking about before, if you have kids, you have to be able to switch out of it. And so here again, if you can distract yourself, or even let's say if you're playing with your kid and you when you are playing with kids, with my son, he's 10 months old. The kind of playing we do, it's not totally going into a different world, but I do try to get into a fun, playful, silly mindset with him. But sometimes when you play with older children, they really want you to make believe and go into a different world with them. And the more you embody it and take it on and lose yourself in it, the better. That's a very good thing. And you have to try your best to be able to do that, to be able to switch off and switch out of whatever it is you're thinking about, if it's what's happening in Iran, or if it's just your work or other life stresses. Your kids need you to be there for them in the best way you can, which means you have to be able to put those feelings aside, avoid those feelings or avoid those thoughts during that period, and just be with them. As I said, my heart breaks to say that, knowing that for the people of Iran, maybe this sounds almost cold, and I don't mean to come off that way, because they can't just turn it off. It's not news that they're looking at on their phone or their TVs. They're experiencing it every day. So I really hope to not become enough insensitive talking to the challenges that people are having outside of Iran, when what people in Iran are facing is so much more difficult and not even possible, the advice that I'm giving here. So I do want to make that point again. And at the same time, remind all parents that our role is to show up for our kids. As parents, we're human, so we can't be robots. We can't always be perfect or always have this perfect smile on our face, but sometimes we have to be able to distract or avoid, or at least put some feelings aside in order to be there for them, to give them what they need. Let's go to our first commercial break. We'll be right back. Back. The first segment, I was talking about the sometimes positive functions of avoidance or distraction. When we hear certain words, we just assume they're negative if you're avoiding or if you're distracting. And they very often are, and most of the time they are. But there are times where actually avoidance is a good thing or a good tactic. We think of them all as coping mechanisms. And often we think of them as unhealthy or healthy, which sometimes they are, more or less always going to be one or the other, unhealthy or healthy. But most of the time there are some exceptions, and that's some of the ones that are there for avoidance that can be actually beneficial, or moments where it can be beneficial. And at the same time, looking at the other side of it, of course, avoidance can be bad. That's kind of like the general way we think about avoidance. But what I wanted to mention was how, living in this world, so this is kind of going very different from when you're going to go interact with your kids and you have to try your best to put on your best mood and your best step forward so you can be with them, or your best foot forward. But living in this world is a tough thing. Life is difficult. Life is painful, or has pain in it, no matter what. And if you want to be connected to the world and connected to people, you have to be ready to face some pain and have pain, or else you can't interact with the world or face the world or be connected to the world. And I say this, so it's a very different direction in some ways from what I was talking about before, because I'm thinking of sometimes you hear things like toxic positivity, and sometimes labels almost take away the meaning because they get used so much or become so cliche. But there is definitely movements, which always have existed, and now obviously they move online, of let's see or find a way that we can always be happy, or that should be the goal, to always be happy, to never be sad. And of course, I'm not here to say that sadness is better than happiness, but I definitely don't think, one, that it's possible at all to always be happy, or two, that it's even a good thing, to strive towards or to strive for. I think even people, I've heard them say this about psychologists, like, oh, you're a therapist, so you probably can always stay happy, or, you see people put stuff online, in that kind of way, that there's ways to inoculate yourself or protect yourself from ever feeling bad. But that's not possible. And sometimes you'll hear things like, well, you can't feel happiness if you don't feel sad. Or no, you'll say you won't know what happiness is if you don't know what sadness is, which is kind of maybe true. But to me, it's more that if you don't let yourself feel everything, then you can't feel anything really. So if you're not okay with feeling all the feelings and engaging with life, then you won't feel any of the feelings really. You might think you kind of do, but to really feel genuine happiness, it's not that you have to know sadness to know what that happiness is, but you have to let yourself feel everything to then feel that great joy, and which also means you're exposed to feeling great pain as well. But it's the only way that it is possible. I think Brene Brown, I remember in one of her early talks, said something about how you can't just numb the bad feelings. You can't just numb some feelings. And I think that's a really good way of putting it. So you can't just say, I want to feel good all the way when the good things happen, but when bad things happen, I don't want to feel anything at all. It's just not possible. It's talking about inoculating yourself, but really it's more like numbing yourself if you do that. So if I inject you with some kind of painkiller or some kind of anesthetic that makes you completely numb, it's very true that you won't be able to feel pain, but you won't be able to feel anything good either, because you just won't be able to feel anything at all. You're just going to be numb to everything, which might feel more comfortable or more safe and more in control, something that we often are striving for. But it'll make you also feel an emptiness because you won't feel very much at all. So I hear this even like, let's say if someone gives a compliment, and people say, oh, like you should take on that compliment. It should feel good. And, you should really let yourself feel good about it. Take the pride, take the, acknowledgement, and then thank the person for it. But then if you're insulted, say, oh, like who cares what people think? Or, or I've heard people say, oh, pretend like it's in a different language or something like that. And to me, that just doesn't work. You can't feel the good when it comes, but when it's bad, pretend like it's not there. If you're saying people's words matter to me, then they matter to you. I do think we want to think about how much they matter to us. Even when they give us a compliment, it shouldn't take us over the moon, because that could be concerning and show that we are our sense of self and our self-worth is too tied into what other people think and is not as stable within ourselves. So that's something about how much we are affected up and down. But there's no way to just feel the up and the good without also feeling the down. So if someone compliments you, that can feel good. And if they insult you, that should feel bad. It makes sense. Again, how much, and we can think about who is this person giving me the insult and why are they doing it? What's going on? I might not need to take it personally. But the compliment too, people just sometimes give empty compliments, or they might say something for whatever reason. So you don't want to get too taken up by it. Relationships in general, it's like, oh, like love feels great. You should be in a relationship, feel good, all those things. But then if you're in a breakup, it's like, oh, but why are you feeling sad? You should just be happy you had the relationship, or just move on, or just don't think about it, or, you're ungrateful if you're sad, or all sorts of things that will say, which again, if you feel good about having a relationship, it should hurt if you lose that relationship. Even there's a lot of quotes around this topic of grief being the price we pay for love. That if you love someone, when you lose that person, but whether it be from the end of the relationship or death or whatever way, it should hurt. That's the price we pay for having relationships we care about. And if you think in your own life of people who have died or you've lost, yes, of course, the way the loss happens, sometimes it's a surprise or shock or something's going to definitely impact it. But the biggest determination of how hurt you are is how much you love that person. When you really, really love someone and are very, very close to them, that loss is greater than someone that you're not very close to. And so we can't have close relationships without having those relationships hurt when we lose them. It would be nice to just be able to have the good without having the bad somehow, to have the good without the risk of the bad, because that's often what it is. We will feel some pain and some loss in all of our lives, every single one of us. But how, what ways, what times it's going to happen, those things, a lot of them are uncertain and unpredictable, unless we're, causing them in the relationship ourselves, directly. But so many of our losses are unexpected and completely out of our control. And so it's not clear what you're going to face. But if you want to have a full life, you have to expose yourself to be fully hurt too. There's just no way around it. I think sometimes people want to find that way. And as is often the case with self-help influencers and gurus, they're often promising you, they're selling you the promise of something that's not possible, but we all wish were to be true. What if you could just feel good in your relationships, but then when you break up, don't feel anything at all? Well, I have the way, and I could tell you about my relationships where I, loved the person so much, but when they ended, I felt nothing bad. It's kind of like superhero narrative that we can believe, because theoretically it can make sense. Like, yeah, well, why does the end of a relationship have to be sad? Maybe you can just feel okay about it, or maybe you can just see it in a different way. Even I see people sometimes in these self-help type of world or transformation type of world say, yeah, even if your family member dies, why does it have to be a sad thing? Why does it have to be something you get upset about? And sometimes they're trying to extend on this point of things aren't good or bad. It's what we think that makes it so, or whatever. I'm definitely butchering Shakespeare's line, I think, there, but that everything is up to interpretation. It's not just that it's good or bad. And I think it points to how so much of what we experience is up to interpretation, but there are some values that I think we all can recognize are important to have. And one of them is that life has value, that life is better than death. And I was in a course like this once, where this was brought up many years ago. And I don't think I said it, but I remember the thought came to me, and I wish I said it, that, okay, so I said, oh, let's say your mom died or your dad died, or, whoever died. Why does it have to be a bad thing? And then I said, okay, I was thinking, well, if the person was in front of us and they were choking and we could save them, should we save them or not? And now if you're saying them being dead or alive, or if they died, it doesn't matter, then you're almost saying you'd be neutral to saving them, that it doesn't matter if you save them or not, because either one of them is okay. And I think we all know that if it's happening right in front of us, everyone would want to save that person's life, because we all know that them living is better than them dying. So we'd want to save their life because we do think of that as a good thing, and the death is a negative thing. It's a bad thing. It is an inevitable thing. It is a part of life for sure. So we can understand that and accept that that's going to happen. But that doesn't mean that the pain isn't there, or there isn't any pain. Again, if you love and are connected to that person, whoever they may be, it will hurt. It should hurt. Even I mentioned this before, that if you are in romantic relationships, I hope you are in romantic relationships that when they end, you are gutted. You are really, really hurt. I think people think, oh, I went through a breakup and I was okay right after. To me, that's not a sign of a good thing. It either means, maybe the relationship ended for you a long time ago, so you already were getting over it, and that's not good, that you stayed in a relationship that you didn't want to be in, or that you were over. Or you didn't get that into it at all, like let yourself get close to the person, and that's not a good sign. That shows that you were afraid of the intimacy. Maybe you were with the wrong person to begin with, so you didn't feel much, or whatever it is, but you weren't building a good relationship and investing into a good relationship. Or maybe you're hiding your feelings from yourself if you're saying you weren't sad, or you didn't cry, or whatever it might be. And none of those to me are good things. But I think to many people, these come off as signs of strength. If someone says, oh, yeah, me and my boyfriend broke up after 4 years and I didn't even cry and I was fine the next day. Or, me and my girlfriend or my fiance, things ended and I don't care. Like I'm okay with it. It's always unfortunately seen as a sign of strength to not be sad, and often a sign of weakness to feel sad. That sadness is a sign of of being weak. Sadness is a sign that you're not strong, that you're not independent. And none of those things are true. Even sometimes we'll say, oh, that means you were attached. But as human beings, like many animals, mammals, we form attachment bonds with our loved ones. You should feel attached with your loved ones, your significant other, your children, parents. That is a healthy bond. I think, of course, we sometimes think of attached as in this idea of getting too clingy too quickly in an anxious way. That can be unhealthy. So I'm not saying every way of attaching so quickly is a good thing, and there's no way that it's wrong. But I think that word, because we hear it in that way, that oh, you're attached, that means you're clingy and you're too dependent on someone too soon, makes us think that attachment is not good. But no, actually, if you are forming a significant a relationship with a significant other, you should feel attachment over time. You should build that feeling of that very, very strong connection that can feel like life or death when it is broken, because it is similar to the feeling we have as children with our parents, and then the parents have it with their children, where we are dependent on them. But that's the kind of emotional bond we build as human beings. So if you tell me I was with someone for several years and never felt attachment towards them, that's not a sign of strength. That's actually a weakness, that you were afraid to let yourself be vulnerable with them, to form that attachment, to build that bond with them, which then would hurt like hell when you lose it. But it doesn't make you strong that it didn't hurt. It means that you weren't ready to risk. You weren't vulnerable. I don't know, this example just comes to me right now. If you said I went to the gym and I didn't get sore, I mean, maybe it's not the best example, because there's, sometimes when you get in really good shape, you feel less sore. But, that doesn't mean that you are so strong necessarily. It could mean that you just didn't push yourself very hard. You didn't do things that were difficult or challenging. And so in a relationship, the same thing. If you don't feel a soreness when it ends, a pain when it ends, it's not a sign of strength at all. It's a sign of not allowing yourself to feel vulnerable, to let yourself actually get attached in that relationship. There is like this mindset of independence being the goal. And, this comes from one of our classic things that we do, is that when we find out that something is unhealthy, we think the opposite of it is healthy, when usually it's not the case. If you're too hot, being too cold is not good. If you're overly dependent when you become an adult, that's not healthy. But that doesn't mean complete independence is the goal or is a sign of strength. We need interdependence, where we are connected with one another. We have our own autonomy to a degree, but we also are interconnected with each other and others, and with some people very closely. That is actually a sign of strength, and to me, that what we should be striving for. We're at our last commercial break. In the last segment, I'll talk a bit more about how to really be human and to be connected to this world, we have to expose ourselves to pain and feel pain. That is actually the strongest position that we can have. So let's go to our last commercial break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. So in the previous segment, I was talking about how to live a full life, to live a life where you're connected to yourself and connected to the world. You have to be ready to feel pain, experience pain. And there's no way around that. You can't be very connected, very mindful, very engaged with yourself and the world and those around you, and not feel pain. And so we have to accept that and be ready for that. Doesn't make it easy. So I'm not saying that it's an easy thing. There's a reason why we avoid those sad feelings, those painful feelings. They obviously don't feel good, but it's really the only way to live a fuller life. And I mentioned in the last segment, there's sometimes ideas of what psychology should be about or what our goals should be. And some people think, well, the goal is to be happy. And by happy, they need to feel good all the time. Or that's how they would think about happiness. That if I'm feeling good, I'm feeling happy, that means happiness that I should be striving towards. When there's really more to life than that. And there's also definitions of happiness that look at more contentment. How good do you feel and fulfilled do you feel in your life? And that's, to me, what we should be striving towards. So there's definitely different ways to think about happiness or to measure happiness. One that is worth striving for. but the joyful or the feeling pleasant or good is not one we should strive for. And I think, unfortunately, our movement in the world, in a societal level or global level, is towards this, or trying to go towards this sense of feeling good all the time. One of the things that technology allows for us to do is to gain control, or try to gain control over things. In some ways, the elements. Think about how we can live in places where maybe it would be impossible to live outside, or hard for us to live outside when it comes to, let's say, things like weather, just having food and having access to certain things. Also, just more advanced technologies that let us have control over different things. So we tend to get more and more control over life with the advancements of society or advancements of technology. And this might always seem like a good thing, but it isn't necessarily, or it can be harmful. And I think that's something that we are seeing happen with things like, for example, this is like, might seem like an extreme or very unrelated example. People looking for companionship in AI. There's like these stories of people having either robot boyfriends or girlfriends, or AI. It's like a chat bot that they are connecting with, and they say they fell in love with the chat bot. And of course, we can feel lots of things, and we can get fooled into, you might think, well, it's just a robot or it's just a chat bot, but are the narratives that our brain creates. It feels very real. So I understand that. I'm not saying it's, I think it's outrageous in its own ways, but I can understand how it happens. But I think what people are drawn towards often in these scenarios isn't like, oh, it's so good. It's that they want a type of relationship that doesn't have the bad. So, if you talk to ChatGPT, it's always going to be pleasant with you no matter what. It doesn't have bad moods or bad days, or it's never too tired for you. You can ask it 1,000 questions, and ChatGPT is ready to give you an answer. And so sometimes people think, well, why would I want a boyfriend or a girlfriend where I might have to have fights, or things happen, or it's unpredictable? And I think that's exactly what people are being drawn towards, is a sense of, I want to be able to control it, or have a sense of full control. And I want it to always feel good. I don't want it to ever feel bad. And it is true. If you're with, like, let's say, an online or chatbot kind of a boyfriend or girlfriend, you won't ever feel bad. It's always going to, you can always give you compliments, especially you can maybe train it to be a certain way. It'll, say nice things, make you feel good, remind you of things, always ready to talk, always ready to be there for you, won't demand anything from you. All of these things that kind of seem nice, but it won't feel that good, because what makes relationships actually, one aspect of what makes a real relationship feel very good or feel very intimate, is that there isn't a guarantee that the person has to like you, has to be there for you. Of course, we try to build a secure attachment where we feel this sense that I can rely on you. I can expect you to be there for me, to show up consistently, and to show up with love. But that's consistently, not perfectly. There's no sense that if you are in a relationship with someone and you are securely attached and they're a good partner, that they're perfectly there for you. And there is no guarantee that they have to always be there for you. We make commitments to each other. I will love you till death do us part, through sickness and health and all these things. And we make those commitments to say that I will stick it out with you. Even though we all know that people say till death do us part, no one thinks that divorce is illegal or impossible. But you're really saying, I'm making this commitment to try my best and to try really hard. I'm not just going to give up on you and give up on us to make this work. I'm that committed to this. But we all know that it can end. It can no longer be there. And so what makes a relationship, a human to human relationship, have value, or part of it, is the sense that it isn't completely in your control. And people are looking for that control because they want that comfort more than they want the actual intimacy that comes from a real relationship. Or even human to human, often people will choose partners and choose relationships where they feel like they have control, and that feels safe and it feels good and comfortable, but it will often feel very unfulfilling because the passion comes from someone choosing you, someone choosing to be with you and having the freedom to be there with you, not be there with you, respond in whatever ways, which, yes, could be annoying sometimes, could be frustrating sometimes, and also can lead to anxieties or insecurities on how things are going or what is happening. But that's the only way to have a real relationship. And so we are seeking that control because we want that comfort, but we lose a lot with that comfort and control as well. And so we can also try to control what we get exposed to. A lot of times people doom scroll and we are exposed to a lot of negative things, and there's a lot of it online. But we might also think, well, why don't I just expose myself to positive things? There's a lot of negative going on in the world, but of course, there's no shortage of positive things you can expose yourself to. And especially with AI now, you can also just expose yourself to positive things that don't have to even be true or real, and just live in that world. Kind of going back to this avoidance that I was talking about before, avoidance as a coping mechanism. But this, bringing things back into perspective about being connected to the world, if we are going to be part of this world, part of caring about this world, and if you want to make it a better place, you have to see what's not okay with it. You have to engage with that. So you can't tell me you want to make the world a better place and to have a positive impact on the world, but you don't want to see the sad things or the things that are unpleasant. And I know that might sound obvious, it is, but I say this because we often find ourselves or find people that will tell us, well, why do you look at things that are making you sad? That doesn't make sense. Or maybe, one of my favorites, like, that's not rational, because I think people, use the word rational like it only has one meaning, or it's so clear what they're talking about. But there's a sense that, if you see something and it makes you sad, if the goal is to feel happy in life, then you're doing something stupid or something wrong. But I don't agree with that whatsoever. If you are engaged with this world, if you care about this world, you have to allow it to make you sad, or it's going to make you sad sometimes. Just like if you care about someone, that will make you sad. Right now, my son, that's at the strongest example. If he's feeling any kind of pain or discomfort, I feel it a lot. It doesn't feel good and it hurts because I want him to feel okay because I care about him so much. And so if you care about even just anyone else, a friend who's an adult, if they're going through a tough time, if you care about them, it doesn't mean you're going to be devastated and feel it as intensely as they do. But if you really care about someone and they're going through whatever it is, some kind of difficult life experience, an illness, setback of some sort, you feel something because you care about them. And similarly, when they have a win or they get into a relationship they're happy about, get a promotion, you feel happy too because you care about them and you care about their well-being. So, this is something that it sounds obvious, but we do have to be ready that if we're engaging with this world, it will make us sad. And if you want to help the people that need the help the most, you have to see the saddest things. You have to hear the saddest stories, see the saddest images, and then you can take part in it. You don't avoid or you don't just ruminate on it, but you take action to help them in whatever way that you can. And I hope with Nowruz approaching for the Iranians, as I said, we are hopeful, even if times have been a bit dark for the people of Iran, that things can change and sometimes change quickly. And, things take time, and we'll see where time takes things. I'm really hoping for the best for the people of Iran and hoping that they are given the freedom that they've needed or deserved for 47 years now from the Islamic Republic. Hopeful for that. I hope also that in this time of renewal, we can also feel grateful for whatever we do have, those of us wherever we are, to just let ourselves feel that gratitude. But also with that gratitude, I hope we will use that to help other people in whatever ways that we can. I kind of joke that Iranians, we get two chances at New Year's resolutions, that January 1st, but then again, Nowruz, midway through March. So we get this opportunity to make goals for ourselves again. And that's good, and we should have them. But on top of that, I hope we don't just have goals for ourselves and what's happening in our lives, but that we make goals to help other people, help one another. So, of course, to help the people of Iran in whatever ways that you can, and to not forget about them. And also to help people who are also closer by to wherever you are. Unfortunately, if you are in most cities, even in America, there are people that could need help close by to you, and you can help them. And so I hope that people will engage with the world and be expecting to feel the pain of engaging with the world that has to be there if we have that genuine connection. And then all of us to make an effort to help for the betterment of the world in whatever ways that we can. And sometimes the problems seem far away and we can help in the ways that we can for that. But there are always problems and things that are close to you and people that will need our help closer by. So hopefully you can set some goals and set some vision for yourself or some commitment to yourself and for your family to make a positive impact in this year to come. But this, I think, will be my last show before the Persian New Year. So again, all my love goes to the people of Iran and hoping for them whatever happy New Year that they can have, but especially that they have a happier New Year in the year to come, and wishing for the freedom of Iran as soon as is possible. Know that we're all thinking of you, and the celebrations won't feel the same because of what is happening there this year. So our hearts will be with you. All right, that brings us to the end of tonight's show. A big thank you to Farid in the studio. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. Free Iran.